The Senate has carried out its threat to scuttle one of the government's foremost election promises, and now everybody's speculating about an early poll. Another defeat of the emissions trading bill in 3 months would hand the government a trigger for a double dissolution election. But before that point, the coalition will try to alter the legislation, as will a host of lobby groups. From Canberra, Hayden Cooper reports.
Penny Wong called it the day of reckoning, but it won't be the last.
This bill may be going down today, but this is not the end.
Defiant in the face of the government's biggest defeat yet. In almost 2 years of emissions trading groundwork, it's failed to convince the opposition, failed to convince the Greens, and failed to win over the independents too.
This is really pedantic, bloody-mindedness, stubbornness on her part.
Not that the government accepts responsibility, the Senate's rejection of the bill unleashed a wave of recriminations.
But one force has held us back from achieving progress on climate change, and that is the old guard of the Liberal Party. The old guard of the Liberal Party now in control of the Liberal Party.
The dinosaurs in the opposition are leading the debate on climate change.
Those opposite are voting against certainty, confidence and jobs, Mr Speaker, and for that they should be condemned.
Man-made climate change is bull.
It was a victory for the Sceptics. They marched on Parliament to mark the day and to support the strange grouping of politicians who knocked back the bill.
I mean, it's not often that I find myself half in bed with Bob Brown. It's only ever going to be half, I've got to tell you.
The Greens had very different reasons for voting no.
There should be a stronger legislation to tackle climate change, particularly as far as polluters are concerned.
And then there's the National Senators, a band of 5 who'll never fold.
Mr Rudd and Penny Wong were today going to bring on Australia a tax that they believed was going to change that they believed that they were going to change the climate of the globe, and that's what the Australian people believed it was going to do. But of course it's not.
Beyond the Senate walls, all sides are demanding a rethink. Some want it made tougher.
There should be no more handouts to the big polluters, and I think in many ways the big polluters are holding Australia's future to ransom.
But the hard-bitten ETS critics demand the opposite.
There is an opportunity to get this scheme right, to ensure that we get a carbon price in the market that enables industry to adjust in a measured transition way. We don't need to take a baseball bat to the Australian economy on the illusory promise of environmental benefits.
The opposition will now draft amendments in time for the second attempt. And so the government's been handed one half of a double dissolution trigger, and on an issue significant enough to justify an early election. Malcolm Turnbull will now do all he can to avoid the same result in 3 months' time. And if he fails, the Prime Minister might get a very handy smoking gun.
He wants to get a double dissolution trigger so he can have an early election before next year's budget. I mean, let's face it, that's what it's on. That's what he's on about.
So by year's end, the name-calling will resume.
How extraordinarily weak, how extraordinarily lazy, how extraordinarily arrogant.
And the finger-pointing will start all over.
He made an obscene gesture, and I ask you to make him apologise for an obscene gesture.
3 months for everyone to cool off. Hayden Cooper, Lateline.